Liu Wen, on seeing an aristocrat's transplanted peonies as the drought of the 14th year of the Chuanyuan era worsens. Green plateaus and verdant barrows slowly become dust. Drawing water from wells to revive his garden day after day. The 4th month brings flowers and transplanted peonies. I don't know anyone who might still be concerned for the state. Okay, so we continue our series of poems by Tang poets that were not included in the Tang Shi Sampai show. So this is a poem by Liu Wen, who lived from approximately 772 to 811. So he's a mid-Tang poet, and very brief biographical information about him. So he came from a rather good family and passed the Jinshi in 798. And he very quickly became attached to one of the court factions, the Wang Shuwen faction, which was composed of different scholar officials, some of them great poets like Liu Zongyuan or Liu Yuxi. And they were basically in the circle of the of what became, after his ascension to the throne, Emperor Shunzong, who only reigned for about a year, 805, 806. Now, when Emperor Shunzong abdicated, all the members of the Wang Shuwen clique suffered a purge, and they were demoted and exiled to remote places. This is the fate that happened to Liu Zongyuan and to Liu Yuxi. It was not the fate of Liu Wen. He was rather lucky. At the time his emperor died, he was on a 1-year mission as an ambassador to Tibet, which means when he came back, he was able to resume his positions in the court, and he had occupied relatively high positions in the court hierarchy. Nevertheless, some years later, he was demoted and sent to the provinces, and he died there in the south, in the area of the south of China. So Liu Wen is not particularly famous as a poet. The poem that we've read, I'll comment a little bit on it, is a heptasyllabic quatrain, which was the style that was most associated with him. And as you've probably seen from the title and from the content, it feels very much like the typical mid-Tang poem. Like in the mid-Tang, there was this vogue for poetry, which was Confucian and serious and of criticism for the social abuses that were taking place. The Xin Juifu, for example, of Bai Juji are very representative of this style, but generally a lot of the poetry of another clique of poets, the Han Wu, the one that surrounded this other poet Han Yu and his friends, and they didn't quite get along with this coterie of Wang Shuwen, but well, as you can see, the style is pretty similar. So this is a short poem. This is a heptasyllabic quatrain, and basically its topic is social criticism. It is criticizing the aristocracy, more specifically an anonymous aristocrat, for, in a period of drought, spending his water on frivolous pursuits like getting his garden and his peonies blossoming and growing. I think we've talked in other videos that the peonies were like the flower par excellence during the Tang Dynasty. There was a peony craze. Aristocrats loved them, and they spent massive amounts of money in breeding different varieties, and they spent lots of parties visiting the best temple gardens with the most showy peonies, sometimes even stealing them for their own gardens. So this would have been, a frivolous enterprise, but a pretty common and expensive one among the aristocratic elite. Now, according to Confucian values, spending on this luxurious, frivolous pursuits, especially in a time when, as the title of the poem says, that is the 798, the 40th year of the Chuanyuan era, was a period of drought in which, the production of basic agricultural foods was difficult. Well, that would have been a big no-no. So, just as I said, this is pretty typical poem in content, criticism of the abuses, of the excess, of the egoism, short-sightedness and lack of Confucian values of a decadent, depraved elite. Let's take a look at the poem couplet by couplet. It's just 2 couplets. First couplet. Green plateaus and verdant barrows slowly become dust, drawing water from wells to revive his garden day after day. So the first couplet gives us the background in the first line. So the generally green landscape of China, its green plains, its green hills, they are slowly becoming dust. It hasn't rained for a long time. We're in a drought. Natural vegetation, and I think the plateaus and the barrows are mainly referring to natural vegetation. They could be already referring to, the first sprouts of cereals that are being planted by the peasants. They're becoming dust, dry. So the second line presents us with a paradox, drawing water from wells to revive his garden day after day. So in a context of drought, it makes sense that someone or different people would try to draw as much water as possible to irrigate the crops. But here, the water is being used to revive his garden day after day. Now, the character for garden is different from the character for fields. So this second line very clearly emphasizes that all this expensive, tough work of extracting water and of daily irrigating a space is not being used for agricultural purposes. It's used for a garden, which has flowers, and it's meant for pleasure. It's not strictly a place where you plant crops, which in a time of drought would be obviously the priority. Second couplet. The 4th month brings flowers and transplanted peonies. I don't know anyone who might still be concerned for the state. So this is taking place. The 4th month comes around. According to the Chinese lunisolar calendar, the 4th month would roughly be the 1st month of the summer. So more or less our June. So the thing that is flourishing are, the flowers and transplanted peonies. Peonies were really expensive, and, they sometimes, like rice, they were transplanted from one place to another. But of course, rice is a necessity of life, and peonies are just a luxury. And this leads to the last line, which, in a melancholy, pessimistic, social criticism tone, establishes the poet as the lone complainer at this wasteful activity when other things should be done. I don't know anyone who might still be concerned for the state. Obviously, it's a hyperbole, but, it's clenching in the message. In this time of hardship, there are priorities, and the aristocrats are not following through with the priorities. So, as I said, quite a typical poem on social criticism, and of the type we mainly read in the mid-Tang poets. Not only in them, remember that for all scholar officials, Confucianism is a deeply assimilated worldview, and that worldview includes always a criticism of excess and the rulers having to worry about the ruled and to look after them with paternal care.